big star out of me. They'll make a film about a man who's sad and lonely, and all they gotta do is act naturally. Well, I'll bet you I'm gonna be a big star. Might win an Oscar, you can never tell. The movie's gonna make me a big star.
Hello and welcome to Meet Me at the Movies, right here C19 TV. I'm Noel T. Manning II, talking movies, hanging out with Bobby Brady. Dude, how are you, man?
Bobby, I could at least be Greg Brady.
Hey, at least I didn't call you Cindy Brady.
Good point.
But
I hated Cindy. I didn't think she was a cute little thing at all. I just wanted to pinch her head off. Yeah.
You didn't like Cindy?
I hated that Marsha. That's a whole other
Marsha,
story.
Marsha,
Baby.
Marsha.
But Cindy, no.
Okay, all right. Well, Bobby Brady is here now. Greg Tillman hanging out with us, talking movies. If you've never seen this show, we do give you movie reviews. We have special topics from time to time. We tell you what you can view at home if you choose. We give you non-viewer mail, which we've done as well.
We have a lot of that.
We do have a lot of that. So we have a lot of fun. But today is kind of a special show. A few weeks ago, Mr. Tillman asked me about a project I had a chance to work on, Last of the Mohicans.
Yep.
And I said, let's save that for another show. And so we figured, hey, why not just focus on the movie Last of the Mohicans, which was released September 25th, 1992. It was a film that was shot mostly in North Carolina. I'd say 99% in North Carolina. The 1%, there were some river scenes that were shot outside of that. So
Not far from here.
not far from here.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd give you guys a chance, a little behind the scenes look at this movie and how I got involved in it. And so does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, I thought, well, we're doing it. Whether it's good or a good plan or not, that remains to be seen. We'll know in about 25 minutes.
Well, you and I got to know each other right after I came back.
Yeah, you just
from the
finished shooting that. In fact, within months, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and how long ago? 1991 is when we met.
Right.
So we shot it in 91, released in 92.
Absolutely, yeah. Shot in
And when it was
1991.
released, you and Beth and I went to see it in the theater, and you I couldn't pay attention to the story because you were elbowing me. I was standing right over here by the bridge when that happened. When they blew this up, I was over here. It's like, shut up. No.
Yeah, I was giving the crew commentary for the movie before we had DVD commentary.
Yeah, that was great.
Well, now we can do it all over again.
I'm excited. I've forgotten most of it anyway.
The movie cost about $40 million to make. Went over budget when they made it, which with Michael Mann's attention to detail and attention to getting things right didn't surprise a lot of people.
Sure.
But it did make its money back, and it was a big success. It was #1 at the box office for its opening weekend.
Beautiful film.
Yeah, and I owe a lot of that to a lot of things, but the location. It was shot in North Carolina.
Right.
The film itself is a
Where?
period piece.
Where?
Several places.
Yeah.
Chimney Rock, Linville Falls, Asheville, the Biltmore Estate grounds. So mostly in western North Carolina it was shot. Lake James, they built this huge fort to scale.
Really?
So when you actually see the film and you see this fort, you're like, oh, that must be a little set here, a little set there. No, it was an actual fort that some estimates had up to $6 million just to build that.
Wow.
fort.
They probably would have done that with CGI now.
Oh yeah,
I bet.
yeah. I would think so.
Is it still standing, or did they tear it down? when they
No,
left?
it was initially it was going to be set up as a tourist attraction,
Right.
but they used wood that wasn't quite treated properly. So during some of the scenes, you could
Terminex.
you could hear some of the termites
Oh, man.
eating away. So we knew that was not going to be
Sounds like
something.
my house. I shouldn't say that. I may sell that someday. I'm just kidding. I really am kidding.
They'll come back and say, "Hey, remember when you said on that show?" But yeah, it was the fort was just astounding. I've
Right.
never been in anything that was just that magnificent, other than going to an actual fort somewhere
Right.
that they used for historical purposes. But yeah, it was pretty amazing. But the film is a period piece. If you're not aware of it, takes place in 1757, actually in upstate New York. In the forest lands of New York back in the year 1757. And they really couldn't recreate that today without finding a place like the mountains of North Carolina. And I'm so glad they did, because it gave me an opportunity to do something I always wanted to do. Going back to my childhood, I wanted to work on a major motion picture.
Right. Based on a novel, right?
Right.
By Cooper.
James Fillmore Cooper.
I was thinking Sheldon
Fenimore
Cooper. That's
Cooper.
not right. Yeah,
No, not Sheldon Cooper.
Wrong about that.
James Fenimore Cooper. Yeah, and the novel has been made into several films, 9 films, 4 TV movies, several radio adaptations of this as well. But there was actually a 1936 film that really kind of inspired Michael Mann. He always loved the story of.
It's the Randolph Scott version.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. But Michael Mann loved that version. He loved the story of the wilderness, but also you've got this kind of outsider played by Daniel Day-Lewis, who was in between two worlds. You know, he was in the frontier world, but yet he was also very much attached to the Native Americans, and so you know, he ends up having a romantic relationship with the daughter of a colonel,
Madeline Stowe.
Madeline Stowe.
And who wouldn't?
And who wouldn't?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
This made him a star, right?
Yeah, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis.
He'd been around for a while, but this set him on fire.
He had just come off the Oscar win for My Left Foot, but he wasn't this household name. And after this, he became this household name.
Right.
You know, and since that time, I mean, just the list of films. I'm just going to throw a few films out there that he did after this. Age of Innocence, you know, another Oscar caliber performance. Gangs of New York, The Boxer, which is a lesser known film, but I highly recommend that. There Will Be Blood, which you know, Oscar caliber performance, and then of course Lincoln,
Right, Lincoln.
a few years ago. So you know, this was the one that made him that household.
He won
name.
for Lincoln, didn't he?
He did. He won an Oscar.
Did he win
Lincoln.
for Mohicans, or he was nominated?
No, he
or-
did not, but he did win. He has won several
Yeah.
Oscars throughout the years.
My Left Foot. I
My
know.
Left Foot, yeah.
But
There Will Be Blood.
and he's
was
retiring. He's
sorry?
retiring, right? Soon?
Absolutely. Said that he's done, he's finished, he's walking away from acting. And the thing about Daniel Day-Lewis that's different from, say, Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, you will see him every single year pop up in a film. Some are good, some are bad, but you're always going to see him every year in something. Daniel Day-Lewis is the kind of guy that waits, has always waited for just the role that attracted him and just the role that pulled him in. And with this one, he loved that frontier aspect of someone who was completely outside of time, out of this time, but also completely outside of place. Where did he fit in? Where do I fit into this society? Do I fit in anywhere? And he really loved
Story of my life, too, for that matter.
Yeah.
You were there, so I'd heard he was a method actor of the First Order. And
Right.
Did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
He shunned
absolutely.
technology, and,
Yeah.
and tell me about that.
Well, this takes place in the 18th century, so
Right.
1757. The only technology I saw him connected to was he did have a driver for a vehicle. If he had it his way, he would be on foot or on horseback the entire time. But because he had to get from place to place on sets and things like that, and you couldn't necessarily ride your horse downtown Asheville without getting noticed,
Right.
and maybe getting pulled
well,
over.
nowadays maybe.
Maybe nowadays.
Yeah.
But you know, at that time, you know, Sony Walkmans were still a big thing. You know, the cell phones were pretty huge from that standpoint. But he stayed very far away from technology. He learned how to hunt. He learned how to be a frontiersman.
To track an animal.
I'm sorry?
Track an animal.
Oh
that
yeah,
sort of
track an
thing.
animal. He would skinned animals. There were stories, and I never got a chance to talk to him about this, but stories about him actually hunting his own food while he was preparing for this.
Wow.
He had heavy training from Dale Dye. Dale Dye, if you've seen the movie Platoon, he was an expert and actually wrote the book Platoon. He was a military advisor to this. Also, a few others that were connected to this were military and survival in wilderness advisors that trained Daniel Day-Lewis on every aspect of how to live, how to survive in the wilderness, but also how to shoot these old school weapons. And so he would carry these weapons around with him all the time. So yeah, I mean, you didn't see him with any kind of technology. He lived the part. And when I was watching him perform scenes, when he would dive in, it was absolutely amazing. I felt like I was watching the real thing. And that really impressed me. It really blew me away. And I remember going, okay, yeah, this guy is
I
Oscar.
don't think he wanted to
This
engage
guy
in
is
a
Oscar.
discussion.
Quite
He was
amazed by
incredibly
his talent.
respectful to
You were on the set the whole time
Michael
of the
was very
shoot,
much
right?
Yep,
Basically.
I was there from the pre-production all the way through pretty much when it wrapped. There was a big wrap party in Asheville at the bowling alley, if you can imagine. That's
Wow.
where they had the wrap party.
They'd run out of money by then. huh?
Yeah, they ran out of money by then. But yeah, for me, being a part of that pre-production, when you're seeing all the training and all the behind-the-scenes things going on before they actually start the shooting, that was amazing to me. I had always heard about how much work goes on before the cameras ever start to roll. And I didn't have a true concept of that until I saw it. And I remember going in when I was asking to get a job on this movie when I was a college student. And when they called me back and said, yeah, we'll bring you on, the first thing I did was they had me sit down and read the script. Before anything else, they said, you need to know the story. You need to know what we're going for. You need to understand the kinds of shots that we're going to be doing, because you don't know where you're going to be situated, but you need to understand the story. And that blew me away. And that script changed, I won't say tremendously, but it did change quite a bit from what the final cut of the film looked like.
That's not uncommon, though, is
It's not. It's not. There were constant rewrites. I would say daily there were changes that were going on. Sometimes those changes were more significant. There's actually a storyline in the original script where two of the sub-characters, the main characters, Madeline Stowe's sister, Alice, and Uncas, they had a relationship. And in the actual original story, the original script, you could actually see that relationship a little deeper. Now, in the film that was released, you can see that there's a connection between those two. You can tell there's some chemistry between those two, but you don't really realize the extent of it.
That was part of what was cut
that was
to
part
get
of
it
what was
down to
cut.
the running
Yep.
length they
Yeah.
released it at. I
Yep.
see.
And the actress who played Alice, she was only 17 at the time. Her mom was on set with her all the time, so they were very concerned with, what kind of scenes are you doing? And they made the love scenes that she had that were shot very tasteful. They wanted to make sure that those matched with who they were.
Were you there for that?
No,
Because I hear there's nothing more awkward than shooting a love scene.
No,
on,
I was
film.
not there in during the love scenes. Right. And the thing is, my job, I served with the assistant director's office as a production assistant, and I absolutely loved it. That was the best place to be on the movie set.
What do you do? What did you do?
Everything. The beautiful thing about that particular department is they report directly to the director, and so every other department has to funnel through them. So there were certain days I was working with a location crew, scouting areas. There was a day I was working with the camera crew. Another day I may be working with costumes and wardrobe. Probably one of my favorite times was when I was working with Tom Fisher, who was a special effects explosives expert, who did Terminator 2.
Oh.
Well known for that. I worked with him when the fort exploded. And quick story before we go to the break about the fort exploding. Michael Mann, very much a perfectionist, very much wants things exactly like he wants them.
Right.
It was nothing for him to do 20 to 25 takes per scene. I mean, that was just the norm.
Wow.
If you did 18 takes, you were like, wait a minute, what's wrong? What's wrong here?
Yeah.
But anyway, the fort, when you're trying to do explode portions of a fort, you can't do too many takes. This is before the
Right.
CGI. That would definitely be done in CGI today. But I'm with Tom Fisher, and I've got a walkie-talkie, and that's how they're delivering the signal. And so I was getting the signal from Michael Mann to basically say, okay, now, explode it now,
Yep.
set it off.
Yep.
So I did that, and everything exploded, and you felt like it was, the heat was tremendous. The ground shook as if it were an earthquake. So you felt like, okay, volcano, earthquake,
Right.
mass mayhem, chaos. You felt like you were in the middle of a battle.
Wow.
And so I'm like, that's amazing. And then, the word came, and Michael Mann was like, needs to be bigger. So I passed that on to Tom Fisher, and Tom Fisher said a few choice words and said, okay, if he wants bigger, I'll give him bigger. So give me a few minutes to set up. So, of course, had to set up everything, reset it, and then Tom Fisher said, I'm ready. So that was passed on to the director. And then once it started rolling again, it was like, now, this time when it went off, you would have thought, there was no way you were not in the middle of this war zone.
Right.
Ground shook, much larger than before, much heavier, much crazier. You felt off balance. You felt like you needed Dramamine, all of these things.
Yeah.
The heat was tremendous. Dust went everywhere. After the dust literally settled, you heard this kind of voice, that'll do, that'll do. So anyway, just a little brief story about the exploding fort on Lake James during Last of the Mohicans. If you are just now joining us, we're talking about the motion picture Last of the Mohicans, released in 1992. I was very fortunate to be able to work on that, and because of that, ultimately got to meet Greg Tillman, hanging out with us.
So there is a
talking
downside to everything.
There is a
right?
downside to everything. So we invite you to stick around, come back. We'll talk much more about Last of the Mohicans. I'm Noel Manning. That is Alice Nelson, and you're watching C19 TV's Meet the Enemy.
Here's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up three very lovely.
When we first started off, I said, well, who's going to really see this? It is amazing how many people will stop and talk about it. Some fella hollered out political smackdown in Orlando, Florida. There's just really no other outlet for local politics. You need somebody that's been around the block, that knows most of the players, and has some experience at it. And I think that's why people like political smackdown. And we all don't agree with one another, and that's okay too.
Welcome to the Shield Museum of Natural History. I'm Dr. Ann Tippett, Executive Director. Come explore the Shield Museum with your family, where we will inspire wonder and appreciation for science and the natural world. The Shield Museum has been engaging visitors for over 50 years. Come see our planetarium, backcountry farm, Catawba Indian Village, live animals, nature trail, and many other exhibits. Come take a bite out of time at the Shield Museum.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Harrell, your host of For Your Information. I invite you to join us each month on C19 TV, where we will educate you with special guests from around the county on dogs, cats, horses, pigs, snakes, butterflies, you name it. Also, every episode we will bring you a rescue pet for the opportunity for you to adopt this pet. It could be a dog, it could be a cat. So join us each month for your information.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna
Welcome back to
make a
Meet Me in the
big
Movies.
star of me.
Noel T. Manning II here, hanging out with Sam the Butcher. Sam, hey man, how are you?
I got nothing. I got
You got
nothing.
nothing. You got
Sam,
nothing.
Sam wasn't that much of a character. I don't even have anything to pull from. I
Oh,
don't think.
but he, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
he just loved Alice. All right, he loved Alice.
Well, somebody
and
had to.
there's a reason we're talking about that, because Alice was a character on Last of the Mohicans, which is what we're talking about
Wow,
today.
is that
Look
a
at that.
segue? Same actress, same character?
No, whole different.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting. That would have been interesting.
I have a question.
Yep.
We were talking about it over the break about how large the whole cast was,
Right.
supporting cast.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay.
Were there a lot of Native Americans involved in the production,
Right.
really? And do you have to do any kind of training to be
Okay.
in the background?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This was a large-scale production from the standpoint of cast. I mean, this goes back to probably those, cast of thousands kind of Hollywood days that you think about when you think about the Ten Commandments and those big epic kind of films. Michael Mann wanted to make sure that if you saw a major battle going on, that you saw a major battle going on with soldiers. So yeah, huge cast, hundreds and hundreds of extras. There were probably a couple of hundred extras, and these are called featured corps extras, that were trained. You had Colonial, and then you also had the Native Americans, and they were both trained on every aspect of what Daniel Day-Lewis went through. They went through boot camp. They had to learn how to fire the weapons. They had to learn how to run in loincloths. They had to learn how to, properly hold weapons and the whole military aspect of what you do, how do you stand, how do you shoot, all of that. So the training behind the scenes for that, it wasn't just somebody figuring out, okay, let's try this. Attention to detail was huge for Michael Mann, and so during pre-production, I got to work with the Native American crew and the colonial crew very closely, got to know them very well, still keep in contact with a few of those. And Native Americans came from all over the U.S. for this film. And so when you see the Native Americans on film, they are true Native Americans. And then you would go on to see that with Dances with Wolves as well.
Right.
Not long after that, but a couple.
Hollywood didn't used to be very attuned to that
No,
sort of thing.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. But for this film, Michael Mann was very much connected to that. And one of the things during pre-production that I got a chance to do was photography. I was the photographer for one day when they were doing makeup and hair and trying to get things just right, the details just right. And so I just happened to have my camera, and they didn't have anybody else there. So Michael Mann said, let's get these shots. And so I went around, took all these shots of the different profiles of the Native Americans and the painting, the war paint. And then I went to one of the dollar, CVS or whatever the pharmacy was that would do not the dollar, but the hour development. Brought those images back. I got copies for myself as well, just so I
I've
could
seen
have
a few
them.
of those.
Yes.
I remember some of those.
But it was really interesting to see after that, Michael Mann's team looking at those images and go, okay, circling these, I like this, I don't like that, I like this. Okay, let's make some differences and changes here. But yeah, the behind the scenes aspect of what it takes to pull all of that together before it ever happens. Heavy research, and that's one of the things I really applaud Michael Mann on, is just the amount of research that he did with how things looked and how people acted and reacted. You couldn't wear a watch, you couldn't have an ink pen, you couldn't have any of that stuff on the set with you if you were going to be seen anywhere.
Same type of historical accuracy, I guess, Jim Cameron used years later for Titanic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Cameron and Michael Mann are cut from the same cloth.
Right.
As
They're
far
both
as,
jerks, right?
Well, they're
talented jerks.
They are demanding. Demanding
Yeah.
is a good word
All
to
right.
use. And actually, there was one day that I got fired. This is when I was an intern, and then the next day they actually hired me. So,
Whoa. Why'd you get fired?
well, this was really before cell phones were really prevalent,
Yeah.
and you communicated through these walkie-talkies on the set. And Michael Waxman was one of the assistant directors, and this was at the top of this hill. We were doing all these shoots at the top of this kind of mountain, and you had to kind of go through these trails on this car, not really easily to get up there. And I saw Michael Waxman go up, and so Michael Mann's car drove up, and his driver said, "Have you seen Waxman?" I said, "Yeah, he just went up there." Well, he went up there, but there was a back way down, so Waxman came back down. So I wasted 10 minutes of Michael Mann's time.
He didn't like that.
He didn't like that, and so he was saying, you need to fire that guy. And then, of course, for me, I said, I really want to work here, but I've got all my hours in that I'm required for my internship, so if you need to let me go, I've still got experience. But they ended up hiring me like the day after that.
He found out that you were right.
He found out that I was the right man for the job, and so there you go.
Wow.
But
Wow.
I did get from that crew that I worked with in the training, the core crew, I got a Native American name. They gave me a Native American name.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Do I want to hear this?
Yeah, sure. I was called Running Gator.
Running Gator?
Yeah, because I would take care
Like
of...
alligator?
No, actually...
G-A-I-T-O-R?
Well, I drove a gator, but
Oh.
the main thing is I would get them Gatorade. I would take care of all of their craft services needs, so I'd make sure they had food, water, Gatorade. So they called me Running Gator because I was
Running
always
Gator.
running for
We
Gator.
need to ID you as that from now on.
Maybe,
At least
that's
for a
the
while.
thing. That's
Yeah.
the thing. But it was, the experience was monumental. It was
Sure.
something going back to childhood. I wanted to do it from when I was a kid. I always wanted to work on a major motion picture. After I did it, I realized this is not what I want to do for a living, a very vagabond lifestyle.
Yeah.
You have to travel all the time. Once you're a third of the way through, halfway through, you're always wondering, okay, what's next for me? What's next for me? Madeline Stowe, who played Cora Monroe, really got to know her well. One of the days I was asked, she wanted to go take a walk with the character that Alice played. They wanted to get away from the set for a little bit, but because they were principal actors and actresses, they could not go without chaperone. So they said, okay, Noel, we need you to go chaperone them. I'm like, really? I've got to hang out with these women?
She was very lovely.
Yes, they both were.
Yeah.
And so, I got to hang out with them, walking with an umbrella. and to keep them, keep them cool. And I got to know them, and I got to know Madeline Stowe really well. She called me her shadow because anytime she was in trouble or just wanted to get a break from Michael Madman, she would see me and she'd say, Noel, can you get my driver? And so Madeline Stowe, just an amazing actress who went on to do a lot of things, but a lot of things that were not mainstream.
She kind of peaked with Mohicans, didn't she?
She did.
Yeah.
She did Stakeout, the movie Stakeout,
Right.
and then she did a few years ago. They had a TV series called Revenge, and she came back with that.
That's right.
She was married to Brian Benben.
Yeah, from that old
Dream
Showtime
On.
show. Dream On. I love that show.
Yeah, yeah. But Madeline Stowe, I still think about her today. Beth and I both really appreciated her. And if we had ever had another child and had been a girl, we were going to actually call the child Madeline Grace after Madeline Stowe. So
That's not too late.
it's not too late.
Is it too
Never
late, Beth? I don't know, Beth.
Never
Is it too late?
Well, Beth, she'd make me have the kid.
What about Daniel Day-Lewis? You met him, nice guy?
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis, incredibly nice guy. He would take time out of his day to talk to people.
Yeah.
Even though he was this method actor, if you wanted an autograph, he would give you an autograph.
Yeah.
He would have his picture made with people. He was a prankster. He would play a lot of pranks on people.
Really?
And Madeline Stowe did as well. And there was one time that I happened to be with Madeline. Oh, it was the time I was walking with Madeline Stowe and Alice, and the assistant director said, "Hey, we need to get Maddie back to the set." And Jody May was the other. We need to get Maddie and Jody back to the set. And so Madeline said, "Tell them that you can't find me." And so I did, and they were not happy about it. And then I said, "I've got her." Maddie said to pass that on, and they said, "Never do that again." Never do that
Who
again.
said that, Mann?
No, this was one of the assistant directors.
And obviously Mann is not the friendliest guy.
Michael Mann, not a big sense of humor. At least not on the set. When the cameras are rolling, that's all that matters. And but I will say his wife was quite a wonderful person. I enjoyed meeting his wife as well. But love the movie. If you've never seen it, highly recommend watching Last of the Mohicans. And if you need the Noel Manning commentary,
Just ask me. I still have it in my head.
ask Greg, or you can call me when you're watching, and I'll come sit in your living room, and then I'll
And
start
he
talking.
probably would.
I would.
We didn't get to the Tim Cam today.
Tim Cam,
Oh,
you back
man.
there, Tim?
Oh,
There
sorry.
he is.
He's not in a good mood today. He's
Tim
just
Cam,
as
what does
well.
it say?
He's a little grouchy. What does it say? Bite me?
It says, I love to dance.
He gave the show a C.
He
today.
gave the show a C.
Well,
All right.
I
Well,
got
that's
something.
okay. Commendable.
Well,
That's
I'll-
C. That's average.
I'll grade him
I'll take
later,
it.
too.
I'll take it. So if you ever have any more questions about Mohicans and about behind-the-scenes stuff with that, you can email us at info
At
C.
C19.tv.
info at c19.tv.
V.
Or you
like
can
in television?
or you can also just tweet at CinemaScene USA. Till next time, I'm Noel T. Manning II. That is Gregory Tillman. No, it's not Marcia. For this week's Meet Me in the Movies, that is a wrap.
Happy trails to you till we meet again.
Marsha, Marsha, Marsha!